Having overcome the dangers of the dark forests of Farinost, Atark and his people had come to clash with the Astrian forces led by Princess Seri, the youngest of the royal children. After overcoming their assailants, the Ohnugdor had offered her his aid in securing the throne. He offered an alliance bound through marriage between Ohnugdor and Empress-to-be, an offer that she would reluctantly come to accept. From but a simple people of hunters and nomads, the Nephir had come far from their humble origins. They now stood as brave warriors fighting for a land to call their own. The Ohnugdor saw before him an opportunity to do not only that, but to claim themselves an empire. Atark, realizing the enormity of his plans, saw that he was about to lead his people into a treacherous new chapter of their history. The bonds that tied the tribes together were frail, and their only unifying force was the Ohnugdor himself. If he were to perish, the tribes would undoubtedly scatter to the winds, and in these hostile lands would surely meet their demise. He needed an heir. Among those who wielded the greatest mastery over the elements and had proven themselves time and time again, one man in particular had caught Atark's eye. When they had faced the spearbeaks of Farinost, Nephiric witnessed the Ohnugdor subdue Mehen Tahin. Not only had he followed the Atark's lead and tamed a spearbeak for himself, but he was the first to rally the warriors around him to defend their people against the creatures, putting themselves at great risk. He saw in him not only a fierce warrior, but a kindred spirit, a great man who placed the well-being of the tribe before his own, and would from then on personally mentor him in the ways of the elements. As the war continued to rage, time was in short supply, but nevertheless Atark organized a public ceremony for Princess Seri and himself. He did not do so out of any love for the princess, but as a promise to his people, and as a statement to the Astrian soldiers who begrudgingly now followed them to battle. On that night, the Nephir were transformed from a people fumbling in the dark in a desperate bid for survival into an army with a clear purpose and ready for war. Come morning, their great journey continued. Heavily fortified and shielded by its great walls, Teninel, the capital city of Sovngarde, now blocked their path. Lacking both equipment and supplies, the Nephir were not prepared for laying siege to a city for long. They ravaged the countryside and pillaged what food and resources they could, but it was clear to the Ohnugdor that he had little time to spare and needed a swift solution. Ordering his warriors to surround the city, Atark, sensing the futility of prolonging their stay, personally led the spearbeaks in a direct assault on the walls. With their powerful talons, they quickly scaled the sheer stone walls, and with their battlements overrun by monstrous creatures, they were soon able to force open the gates. And in so doing, the city was forced to surrender. But taking the city was only the first step towards their goal. They were not here to hold the city. They were here in order to deprive the Prince Julin of his reinforcements. The Ohnugdor made the people of Teninel an ultimatum. As long as they would pay tribute to the horde and give them every single fighting man still able to hold a blade, he would allow them to maintain not only their lives but also their city. These fighters would not be taken in as soldiers in the same manner as the men under Princess Seri. The Ohnugdor had no way to ensure their loyalty, and so they would be taken as slaves, or groom, in the native tongue of the Nephir. From now on, they would have little to no rights, but if they served their masters with honor, they could one day earn their freedom, or, if they so choose, a place among the Nephir as equals. In order to prevent the people of Teninel from rising up in rebellion, and to ensure that their tribute was paid, the Rakiri tribe would remain in the kingdom of Sovngarde. The rest of the horde, their numbers now bolstered, were ready to march to their next destination in the northeast, to the Gap of Atark. It was clear to everyone that Atark was very much the one in charge of their alliance, and as time passed, Princess Seri was losing control of her own army. Before they could reach the Gap of Atark, they were intercepted by a united force of Astrian and Atarnorian troops under the command of Seri's elder brother, Prince Julin. Refusing Seri's pleas to surrender, Prince Julin had set up camp on top of a nearby hill, inside the walls of the ancient fort of Cartenor. The Ohnugdor had wisely instructed his men to pitch their tents on the other side of the river. The natural barrier of rushing water hindered Julin from launching sorties to harass their camps, and the main crossing over the river was under their control. Unlike in Tenenel, the terrain around Cottonor heavily favored the defenders. For near upon a month they remained at a stalemate. The Solingard men, now under the banner of the Nephir, were uneasy about attacking Prince Julin and their fellow countrymen. With nearly no progress being made other than nightly raids and the odd sortie, Atark's patience had come to an end. As his wife pleaded with him to spare her brother, he gave him a final chance to surrender, which was, unexpectedly, summarily refused. He ordered Solingard Gruen to assault the fort head-on, together with the bravest of his warriors. Meanwhile, Atark gathered up his most powerful shamans, and, with the spearbeaks in tow, they headed north to cut off their escape. Though the Astrians at Cottonor fought bravely to the bitter end, and claimed the lives of many Gruen and Nephir warriors in their futile assault on the walls, they were eventually destroyed. As the rituals performed by the Ohnugdor and his shamans came to their conclusion, the ruins of Cottonor were struck with all the fury of the elements. Flame rained like hail from the sky as gale winds hurled the men like dried leaves. The ground turned to mud, while the very earth itself rose in anger to sunder the ancient walls. Their astral shields, unable to withstand the assault, soon were shattered. Prince Julin, together with his men, was utterly consumed by the raging inferno. Exhilarated by their crushing victory, the horde marched throughout the night for the Gap of Atarnor, giving Princess Seri little time to mourn her fallen brother. Many of the Gruen and Astrian soldiers had been unable to stomach the destruction they had witnessed at Cottonor. Throughout the night, under the cover of darkness, there were many attempts to desert, but on foot they had little chance of evading their masters. Few were the men who were able to flee, and the rest were rounded up and returned to the army, or killed for their cowardice. At the Gap of Atarnor, the horde came across a lightly defended watchtower. Invigorated by their recent conquests, they eagerly slew the meager Aranorian force stationed there. But before they could seize the tower, a beacon was lit at its top. Atark's eyes widened as another appeared against the night sky. Flame after flame came alight until he realized that they had stepped into a trap. From all around, the enemy descended upon them. The horde was in full disarray, but they still vastly outnumbered their assailants. Under the midnight sky, chaos ensued, and they fought throughout the night until the rising sun glistened in the blood-stained grass. To his relief, Atark saw that although scattered, the horde had managed to rout several columns of High Kingdom troops, and victory was yet within reach. The enemy was faltering, and he saw that their forces had grown weary and disorganized. The Ohnugdor, together with his fearsome spearbeak Mehen Tahin, rode for the enemy lines in a bid to break through their center and allow his riders through to surround the Astrians. They barreled through the army, felling men with every stride, when suddenly his beloved spearbeak came to a violent stop as its head exploded into a cascade of brains and blood. Atark slammed into the blood-smeared ground, the air knocked out of his lungs. Gasping for breath and struggling to his feet, his weapon still in iron grip, he saw before him a man with hair like fire. Before he could act, Atark could feel the air around him begin to tingle with energy, and every hair on his body stood on its end. He met the man's gaze, eyes glowing like embers, and with an intense flash of light, the Ohnugdor was no more.